Hi, everybody, and good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are in the world. Thanks very much for joining us on the Monday live stream. And as you know, we are broadcasting across the Facebooks, the YouTubes, the Rumbles, the Getters, the Twitters, the Odysseys, the D Lives. Yeah. We're so many places we're broadcasting. So wherever you're watching on, you're very welcome. And let me just, before we bring our guest on, I just want to bring up so I can see over onto Getter as well. Just bring up the live stream there, make sure it's working. So as usual, bear with me whilst I press a few buttons here just to make sure everything is working fine. So yeah, it seems to be fine. So okay, that's all the technology sorted out. So first of all, as I said, thanks for being here. I had a little break over the weekend, my birthday weekend, so I didn't put up any podcasts, but I have put some up today. I would commend you check out the Kelvin McKenzie podcast in particular. I'm pretty pleased with that one there because, as we are going to talk about in the next hour, the things are changing. The Bob Dylan once said, "What the times they are changing," and things are changing here. So, hi, Chris, Brian, Leslie, Mally, Tiger Boy, Old Bass. Thank all of you guys joining. Remember to share this as well, by the way, so as many people as possible get to see it. And if you're one of those people who watch this on replay, as lots of you are, again, I hope you will enjoy the content. We've got a lot of stuff to get through in the in hi Melissa in the next hour. So look. Obviously, one of the big themes that everybody's talked about for the last few years has been COVID, the response to COVID, where we are as a society post COVID or post vaccines or whatever it is. It's been a dominant theme, understandably, because I don't think there's probably anybody watching this whose life has not, in some regard, been changed since early 2020. So, therefore, that being said, obviously the whole sort of area of medical ethics and freedom of speech have kind of been central to so much of what we've talked about. And with that in mind, I will like to know. I'm delighted to bring onto the stream our very special guest for this Monday evening. He's sitting there in the background quietly. He's going to come on the stream now, and that is Dr. Ahmed Malik on the screen. Hi, Ahmed.
Hi, and happy birthday.
Thanks very much. I had my last slice of birthday cake just before coming on air, so
Amazing.
so that was that's the best way to start a live stream. I can tell you, just digesting birthday cake. But look, thanks very much for coming on. And oh, by the way, you can all find Ahmed here on Twitter. If you just see you can see his stream there. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you hit the follow button because one of the things that we kind of lack a wee bit is common sense. There's been a void of common sense, and I'm very pleased, Ahmed, from following your. Oh, hi, David McCollum, my friend. Good to see you, Sandy. All of you guys. This is just the way it goes, Ahmed. People keep coming in, and I like to acknowledge the folks who do come on. Let's start off. Let's start from the top on this one, right? So, just perhaps for the benefit of the different audiences who are watching this. And I know there's people from as far away as Australia on one part of the world, and I would think Hawaii on the other part of the world watching. So all parts in between. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, Ahmed, and then we'll get into the heart of the discussion.
Yeah. Short version is I'm an orthopedic surgeon and I've been a doctor since 1998. I'm originally from Glasgow. I was born there a long time ago. I'm the son of immigrants who came over to this country in the early 60s. And I moved down to the London area back in 2001. And I've been practicing since then, and in the private sector only since 2017.
Okay.
I could go on more, but I think that's enough.
Just out of interest, how did you find the transition from Glasgow to London?
Oh, it was quite pleasant actually. When I was growing up in Glasgow, we were taught that English were the enemy. But when I came down to London, I was amazed at how people just loved my accent, were very welcoming, and actually, contrary to what it was like back home, very welcoming in the sense that they just kept opening the doors for me and saying, "Oh, we've got a job for you here, and we've got a job for you there." I couldn't actually get a job in Glasgow. I tried so many different hospitals, and then a professor came up to me and said, "Try going down to London and coming back up." So I came down for 6 months, and then the rest is history.
Yeah, yeah. Well, obviously, talking of history, then, as I was saying at the introduction there, Ahmed, the world kind of changed for pretty much everybody, I think, in early 2020, and the last couple of years have been challenging and scary and frightening and also transforming, I guess, for many of us. So just let's chat about how did you find it when COVID first hit? What were you doing? What was your response? What was your thinking? All of that kind of stuff. Let's chat about that.
If it's all right, I'm going to go back a wee bit. So, 2016, we had the Brexit referendum.
Yep.
I didn't actually get a chance to vote. I wanted to vote, let's get out, but I didn't get a chance. But when the result came through, I have to admit, and I hope I haven't offended anyone by saying this, I punched my fist in the air and I was really happy because we went against the establishment. And
Yep.
I'm very anti supranational states, and I'm very much small government, local, devolved, blah, 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 libertarian. So I wanted to get out of the EU. I thought we were heading in the wrong direction. It was unelected bureaucrats. It was fundamentally corrupt. And I think I've been proven right by looking at what's happened in the pandemic in the last few years. But
Yeah.
anyway, so the Brexit thing happened, and I was very upset when I saw the government and the media, this concerted effort to try and overturn what the people were trying to achieve. And the label that was being banded around was, these are all white, racist, working class idiots.
Mm.
And I looked in the mirror and thought, maybe I've got an identity crisis. So
Yeah.
I got quite angry with the media, and I got quite angry with the politicians for, smearing and belittling the people who wanted to get out. It was easily visible to everyone. It was fear porn, and it was just they're trying to overturn a democratic process. So I got involved in the Brexit Party, and I actually was standing as a potential parliamentary candidate up until Nigel Farage had stepped down. Now that process, unfortunately, really hit my income stream. I'd gone full-time private, I'd left the NHS, I was very disillusioned, I'd been head of the department for 3 years, and I found that the NHS was fundamentally a cult. It was corrupt to the core, extremely inefficient, and I couldn't do anything to change it. And I couldn't treat patients the way I would my family. So I left. And, I work 3 days a week, and it's not about making a lot of money. I drive a Kia, for God's sake. It was about treating patients the way I wanted to treat them and spend time with my family, my kids. But suddenly my income dropped by half. And the reason why was all the private GPs around me were very pro Europe, anti-Brexit. When they found that I'm up, canvassing on the streets,
Yeah.
they just stopped bringing patients to me. So I don't regret doing what I did because I stood up for democracy, and I'm glad I did the right thing. But by the end of that whole process, beginning of 2020, I just wanted to quiet life and get on with my job. I was just getting at that whole Brexit thing, and suddenly the pandemic hit, and it was like, oh. And I don't think I was ready for it. And I've always been very wary of the government and the media and their lies and big pharma. But I'm not going to lie to you, I got hoodwinked. For 3 weeks, I fell for the fear porn. I was like, oh my goodness, there's something scary coming out of China. We need to mask up. We need to isolate. We need to lock
Yep.
down. I'll be honest with you, I lost the plot. And then by day 2, 3 into the lockdown, when I started hearing everybody stay at home and don't come out and don't go to the hospital, and basically when you're dying we'll bring you in and ventilate you, I thought, hold up, hold up, what is going on here? And then thankfully, the fear lifted and my critical thinking came back, because ultimately, fear is the mind killer. And, I
Yeah.
fell for the fear. I fell for the fear.
Yeah.
Um, and then my critical mind came on, and I was like, what is going on? And then, news started to filter through. And because I was involved with the Brexit Party, where everybody who's involved in Brexit is clearly anti-establishment, very wary of the government, the Tory, the Labour Party, everybody. So
Yeah.
I had a group that I was involved with, WhatsApp, and we were all passing information to each other and saying, this is one big BS.
Yeah.
And at the time, anyone who was thinking like us was labeled conspiracy theorists.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
goddamn conspiracy theorists have got a really good track record as far as I'm concerned.
They have. Yeah. Yeah.
So long story short, then, I just thought this is ridiculous. And they're just basically a power grab. They want power, they want money, something strange is happening. But I was isolated from my work, I couldn't practice. Strange things were coming out from my colleagues in the NHS. They were telling me how they're just sitting at home doing nothing. They're happy, they're getting paid, and it's like a big holiday. And I was like, what about the crisis? And they were like, what crisis? So I was just like, what the hell is going on? This is so weird. And then talk of the vaccine was coming out in late 2020, I think.
2020. Yep.
Yeah, and I just remember being really skeptical, because vaccines and drugs take a very long time to come through. They have so many trials and animal trials and testing, and these systems have been put in place for a reason, the rigorous processes to make sure something's safe. And even though we've got these established processes, we know that pharmaceutical companies do corrupt studies,
Yep.
manipulate the data. And more, very recently, when it comes to like anti-inflammatories and other drugs, they've got themselves into big trouble and had to pay out billions of fines. So, despite rigorous processes, dodgy stuff happens. But now we're getting this vaccine come out, which has never been able to be produced before. If we could make a vaccine for a common cold, it would have come out by now. But notoriously, it's not happened because the virus mutates so much. And there was studies done previously for the SARS-CoV-1 virus. Yeah. And my understanding when I read everything was that it wasn't safe. And actually, the researchers said we should really abandon efforts to do this, because actually you get something called antibody-dependent enhancement, blah, blah, blah. So I was a bit like skeptical, and I'm thinking, And then they started rolling it out, and then there was so much pressure in the healthcare. Everybody has to get a vaccine. If not, we're going to mandate it. This is the way out of the lockdown.
Yeah.
And this is the only way. And we're now second, third lockdown, whatever it was. I was losing the plot. I just wanted to get back to normal life. And I was having some arguments with my wife, who was convinced that these are safe and effective because Chris Whitty has said they're safe.
Yeah.
And why would they lie? And and I'm the opposite. I'm like, can.
Yeah.
Anyway, second momentary madness. I do make mistakes. I had one shot of the Pfizer vaccine. And at the end, I walked into the car park, into the car, sat down. I almost cried, felt sick to the core, because I thought about what had just happened to me. I've been mentally isolated from my colleagues, from work, from my patients. I've been stuck at home. Fear porn had been bombarding me day and night, everywhere you go and look. And then, psychologically, I was being told that if I don't do this, I'm a bad person. I'm a bad doctor. You're not going to be able to practice.
Yeah.
So a lot of the people who took the vaccines, I don't feel angry or bad at them. We're talking about literally military grade psychological operations.
Okay? Yeah.
Now, after the one shot, however, and I did it, I'll be honest with you, I only did it to prove to my wife I was not some crazy conspiracy theorist. She was literally telling me, and I can say this to you because she's come around to my way of thinking. But she was at one point suggesting that I see someone for psychological help. She was worried about my mental state because I was questioning what was happening.
Mhm.
So for the sake of my marriage, I thought, oh, I'll get a shot. I'll prove to her I'm not crazy. And that was the stupidest thing I could have done because I just let go of my common sense. And every fiber in my body was telling me it was the wrong thing to do. But anyway, I pitched up and literally someone came up. I said, what's in this? They went, the vaccine, it's very safe. Roll up your sleeve. I didn't get a chance to properly ask anything. And I was told, you'll get a sore arm, sit over there. If you don't have an anaphylactic reaction in 10 minutes, you can go home. Now, having consented thousands of patients in my career, I can tell you that's not how consent goes.
No, it's
So
not,
can I
is
tell
it?
you about consent?
Yeah, let's talk about consent. Yeah.
Mm. So when I see a patient, for example, I first of all I tell my patient, look, I'm not here to tell you what to do. My job is to inform you, to educate you, and to empower you. I want you to feel empowered after you leave this clinic room. Because quite often as a patient, you feel helpless, and I don't want that. And the helplessness comes from not knowing, fear.
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
you impart knowledge, and that knowledge is power, so they can leave empowered to make the right choices. And then I give them choices. And one choice is always you do nothing, you leave it as it is. Then
Yeah.
another choice is any kind of non-interventional treatment, medicinal treatment, or surgical treatment. And then I
Yeah.
explain with each treatment what the pros and cons are, what the patient's individual risk is, and what the potential benefits are. And I
Mhm.
also give patients time. So no one ever says to me, right, oh yeah, I want an operation, book me in. I go, that's great. You feel like that. Come back another day. Go away
Mm.
and think about it. I
Mm.
wouldn't buy a TV without sleeping on it. You're not having an operation without sleeping on it.
Yeah.
And whatever decision they end up choosing to decide upon, I have to respect it. And I can't judge them on that decision, even though I might find it a bit strange. If it's not going to harm them, that's their choice. That's they're adults, they're consenting, they can decide
Yeah.
whatever they want to do.
Yeah.
And the next thing is there's no coercion. So I'll give you an example of coercion. I'm sad to say this is a true account of a consultation I had last week. I had a patient come and see me who I saw initially 3 months ago who tore a tendon around the ankle. And I
Okay.
told this patient it wasn't a complete tear. And if it was me or if he was my family member, I'd brace the ankle, do some physiotherapy, and give it 3 months. And there was a chance it would heal naturally and they would do okay. But if it didn't, we could then think about surgery.
Mm.
Anyway, this patient came into my clinic, sat down, shook my hand, and thanked me for being an ethical surgeon. He said, my ankle's fantastic. I've made great progress. I'm so happy. I didn't need an operation. And I
Yeah.
went, great. He went, now let me tell you a story. 15 years ago, I sat in the same room with another chap who I believe is retired, and he is. And I had a knee problem. And he said, if you don't have an operation within the next 3 months, you're going to be in a wheelchair for your life. And I
Right.
had the operation and it wasn't great. And later on, I found that actually I wouldn't have been in a wheelchair. And it was all just to operate on me. And that's coercion. Telling
Yeah.
someone that they're going to be in a wheelchair if they don't have an operation is a form of manipulation and coercion. Now, I can
Mhm.
tell you that consultant has retired, lives in a very big house, and has an even more expensive wife. And
Right.
yeah, he got to that position because he was probably operating on people who didn't really need surgery.
Mm.
And so this
Mm.
thing, about ethics, it's an issue that's important because it's developed over centuries. We need good ethics, otherwise there will be no patient-doctor trust. Okay, and
Yeah.
anyway, I was comparing how I've been consented to the jab with how I treat my patients, and I thought I've not had proper informed consent, and I felt very bad about it, and I didn't have any more injections. Anyway,
Yeah.
there we go. Do you want to have any
No.
questions you want to ask?
Okay, so let me just come in on a couple of things there. First of all, I would suggest that there are millions of people probably who feel exactly like you did, and in many cases, that all important trust between patient and doctor, I think, Ahmed, has been shattered actually in many cases, because the fact of the matter is that I don't see how anyone could have given informed consent. I don't think it was possible for these experimental gene therapies, as I see them,
Yeah,
to do that.
agreed.
That was a real warning signal, I think, for many of us, that for the first time we were looking at our GPs or with nurses or whatever with different eyes. We were thinking, hang on a second, how can they be saying these things? Which brings me to something I wanted you to talk about as well, because I think that this is something I saw on your Twitter, and I think a lot of people won't quite have heard of this. You talk about the professional duty of candor. Now,
Mm.
that to me cuts to the heart of all of this. And the story you've just told about the operation, I guess that's all part of it. But just for the benefit of everybody watching and who will be listening as well, because this goes out as a podcast, just explain the professional duty of candor to our audience, please.
Yeah. So basically, the General Medical Council, which regulates doctors, issues guidance. And I have to admit, a lot of this guidance is actually really, really good. One of the guidance is duty of candor. So it's quite detailed. And let me see if I've got something I can pull up and read out to you. Just
Yep, that's fine. Yep, we do this on the
So
hoof.
it's all about openness and honesty. So if you think something's gone wrong with the patient's care, you need to report it and you need to inform the patient. If you think something's gone wrong in an operation with prescription, prescribing, administering a drug, whatever, if there's been an adverse effect, if something's failed, a medicinal product, if a hip replacement's not working and it's got a high failure rate, whatever, something along those, you need to inform the patient. You can't cover it up. Now, one of the important things is, people don't like admitting fault or error, especially if there's punishment. And
Yeah.
the whole point of duty of candor is you're meant to be honest and open, and you're not meant to be punished for being honest and open. And actually, you're meant to create an environment and a culture that promotes transparency and openness. And that's what the whole duty of candor is. And it specifically talks about colleagues supporting other colleagues. So I'll read out point number 28, which I think is quite relevant to this.
Yep.
You must not try to prevent colleagues or former colleagues from raising concerns about patient safety. If you are in a management role, you must make sure that the individuals who raise concerns are protected from unfair criticism or action, including any detriment or dismissal. So,
right. Well, I'm sorry, but that one didn't work out too well, then, did it?
That one didn't work out too well. Where the hell did that go? So, the whole world has gone upside down in the last 2-3 years. Common sense has gone out the window. Medical ethics, as far as I'm concerned, has been shattered. The trust between doctors and patients has been shattered. And I'm afraid there's too much groupthink going along. And this process hasn't happened in the last 3 years. It's been going on for a very long time. And I'm old enough, to remember when we all used to wear white coats, but then we got rid of the white coats, we got rid of the teams, the hierarchy. It was all started to get policy-driven, guideline-driven. Guidelines is an Orwellian term, or guidelines aren't guides. They're diktats. You have to follow these rules. And if you don't follow these rules, then you're going to be punished, because why are you not following these guidelines? So what's happened is we've got rid of the patient-doctor relationship and patient-centered care. So now you've just got a doctor who follows guidelines, and it's like, well, tick, 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 and here you go. And then you've got this whole groupthink. People don't want to step out of line. They're scared of promotion or retribution. And
Mm.
a lot of it is, look what's happened to the doctors who have spoken out. So the media and the government have done a very good job of making sure whoever has stood up and put the head above the parapet
Yeah.
properly got shot. And it's a warning
Yeah.
shot. It's not just punishing that individual. I mean, the punishment is so out of proportion to whatever the person has done or said. It's a warning. If you dare question, this is what's going to happen to you.
Yeah, and you're right. And they were, I mean, that's exactly why they did it, Ahmed. It was, it was a bit like in the old days, when they would hang somebody as an example to everybody else. Don't you dare go against the narrative, or bad things will happen to you. But it does essentially fragment that trust that is supposed to be there. I mean, how could any doctor or nurse, when asked the question, is this vaccine safe and effective, how could they give a definitive response to that along the lines of, yeah, it's fine, don't worry about it. It might hurt a little bit when we. But how can so many,
I
can so many go?
I don't blame the individuals per se. I think it's the culture, and it's also the government. Remember those meeting presentations where they all line up, witty, Valence, and they kept repeating the same. It was proper propaganda, safe and effective, safe and effective. And the bigger the lie, the more you repeat it, the more people will believe it and not question it. And and then it's coming from the managers and the regulatory bodies, and it's just, if you step out of line, it's the same thing. If you step out of line, you're in trouble. And it's a lack of critical thinking. It's a lack of common sense. It's a lack, but it's, you know what, David, I think it's all linked. So I know this might sound a bit abstract, but even this whole political correctness and woke culture basically is it sounds like a good thing, but actually ultimately what it is thought control. You're not allowed to think or say things that are out of what is it accepted box. So I'm an absolute free speech guy. If someone wants to say something quacky and weird, let them. If people want to believe that, well, great, good for them. Most people will see the sense in it. But when you start dictating, this is truth, this is right, this is acceptable, well, then you're giving power to a few to decide what that is. And I don't want to be boxed in like that. And I think that's part of the problem, that society, especially here in the West, has developed this whole political correctness, woke, whatever, where you're not allowed to question. You have to go along with the narratives. And every season, a new narrative comes along. And you can see them all. These people will sign up to the new narrative, because when you sign up to the new narrative, what you're displaying to your tribe is, look what a good person I am.
Oh yeah.
And look how virtuous I am. Look how morally superior I am. And the problem with that kind of ideology is, if someone doesn't sign up to the narrative, then you can say to that person, well, then you're morally inferior, you're intellectually inferior, and then you are demanding of our criticism and abuse and whatever. Anyway, this is I think part of the problem.
Yeah, sorry, Ahmed. Just wanted to say, well, I mean, I have had contacts, and I still have, working in the NHS, doctors working in frontline positions in the NHS during 2021 and indeed through 2022, and they felt they did not want to take the jabs, and they didn't. But the amount of pressure these people were under, and some of them were very experienced doctors, had been in the position for maybe 25, 30 years, so very experienced, and they were put in a terrible position because they could see the end of their career coming. Because you remember, they were all threatened with, if you don't take the vaccines, then I'm afraid we're going to have to eventually push you out. So, like you, I have massive sympathy for people in that position, because it's your career, it's your mortgage, it's your family, or accept the narrative and be coerced. That was morally abhorrent from every perspective, wasn't it?
Absolutely. So this whole idea of mandates, around the world, we've seen it in America and Canada,
Yeah,
here, it's that's that's just disgusting as far as I'm concerned. Mandates go fly against, democracy and freedom of speech and bodily autonomy and informed consent and my body, my choice. It's just it's a it's the kind of thing you'd find in a tyrannical totalitarian state, like China or North
yeah,
Korea. You wouldn't think mandates would be here in the West.
but they were.
Um, if you just look back, being told, if you don't have the vaccine, you can't travel, you can't go to a bar, you can't go to a restaurant. I mean, that's medical apartheid. And what I found crazy was the lack of anyone from the medical ethics or regulatory bodies questioning the people who issue guidance, for example, on medical ethics. We've just talked about it, duty of candor, informed consent. Why were they not speaking up and saying this isn't right, we shouldn't be mandating this?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know.
Yeah. Sorry, there's a question just come up. Ahmed, I put it to you. Can I ask if you think the medical profession has become immersed in groupthink? And apologies for my dog kicking off in the background, but nonetheless, what's your view on that? Did the medical profession get wrapped up in groupthink?
100%. I posted this on my Twitter feed. I definitely think there's been groupthink, and we're guilty of that. And I think there's an issue of professional hubris. If you look at all the kind of medical inquiries, like the Bristol inquiry, one of the
Yeah,
criticisms was that there was this professional hubris. We're doctors, we know best. We're a touch on the arrogant side, and we need to park the arrogance and the hubris and replace it with humility.
yeah,
We need to learn to listen to our patients. And what I would say to all your listeners and viewers is the one thing I would say that you should take away from this is don't ever give your decision making to an expert. Trust your gut instinct, because that's the most powerful thing. Be sovereign of your own body and mind, and don't delegate your critical thinking to an external party. Have agency of yourself. That's what I would recommend.
yeah. Because I mean, you've mentioned it several times, critical thinking, and I completely agree. And I guess the thing that protects us from the all powerful state is our ability to think critically. And so many people, unfortunately, because of the seduction of the media, of the establishment of everything, that they outsource their critical thinking to people like Dr. Hilary Jones or whoever it is, and my God, they have paid the price for that.
Yeah, well, this might be controversial to some, and don't take offense from it because apparently you're not allowed to use this word. But I genuinely believe the government wants us all to be fat and stupid. Okay,
Mhm.
they want us to
Yep,
be
I agree.
compliant. They don't want us to be able to think. They want us to follow orders, and they want us to be dependent. You know, um, and it's up to us to break free of that. And we need, if there's one thing we need to learn from this pandemic, is that the government doesn't actually care about us. The
No.
media does lie and is
Yeah.
propaganda.
Yeah.
Big pharma is really corrupt. Big
Yep.
pharma and big food have this beautiful symbiotic relationship where we get sick and they profit from it. And we need to stop depending on other people to save us. We need to take charge of ourselves. We need to start looking after our bodies. We need to be careful about what we eat and what we put in our body. We
Yep.
need to think about how we manage our stress, how we connect with nature, what kind of relationships we keep. I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't believe it's all bad. I've had a really tough life, David, and I
Mhm.
wouldn't change it for anything, because through all this adversity that I've been through, there's been amazing opportunities,
Yeah.
and I've been forged, and hardened and toughened. So yes, it's been pretty rubbish, but it'll only be rubbish if we haven't learned anything from the last three
Agree.
years
Yeah.
and made changes that are going to improve things moving forward.
Now, there's a couple of really interesting things you've been saying that I want to move on to because, you know, uh, again, one of the ways in which the establishment rules us is divide and conquer, and you've been very good, I think, in sort of saying that whether people have been vaccinated or unvaccinated, and those of us, I mean, I have refused the vaccine. I wouldn't let them near me with it, and I guess a lot of the people watching would be like that. But there are also people like you and others who I know who did take one. There's somebody, a regular viewer of mine, took a couple of them before determining, no, this is not right. And the point that you're making is that it's really important, I think, that we don't let that divide us. The people have you've said it so often, Ahmed. You know, we've come to I think a consensus view. It doesn't matter what our status was from my perspective. We should unite, and we should be forgiving of those who did perhaps go down the that route, but not forgiving of the big powers that be behind it all. Is that a fair analogy of your position, Ahmed?
I could hug you. You've just 100%. So look, I love my wife so much. Okay, I love my wife. You know, if you followed me on Instagram, I'm very much an Instagram person. It's only recently I've become Twitter because I thought Twitter was very toxic, but it's changed since Elon's come on board. So, I post on my Instagram about medicine, about health. And one of the things is, I'm really blessed that I'm married to my amazing wife. But we were on the opposite sides of this. She had all 3 shots. She believed the narrative. I did not. And it was causing a major problem with our marriage. And I was really anxious about where it was going to go. Yep. And, I won't lie, part of me was screaming inside my head, oh my God, you stupid, blah, 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 blah. But when I parked my ego and my frustration and my anger, which was really directed towards the government, when I parked that to the side and replaced it with love, I got through to my wife. And she's now, in her own words, she's made it clear to me that she's fully awake. And it was a mistake to take them. She took it in good faith because she believed the government was doing the right thing for everyone. And now, it shattered her trust. And that's the thing. A lot of people are going to find that their trust in the authorities is broken. But the way to get through to the people isn't to, I've seen people I have to admit, it's mainly people who have been vaccinated and believe the narrative are a lot more aggressive than those who haven't been vaccinated. So what I mean by that is the people who have been vaccinated, I stand by Ukraine and all that kind of stuff. You dirty anti-vaxxer, you're dangerous, you're a quack. The insults come flying at you. But generally speaking, the people who have not been vaccinated are not aggressive or abusive to those who have. I think because they respect people's choice.
Yes, that's right.
What I would say is the small minority of people who have not been vaccinated don't get angry with those who got vaccinated. They are victims. They are victims. And taking out frustration and anger on them is really not helpful. The problem isn't them. The problem really is the authorities, the regulatory bodies, the institution, the judiciary, our journalists, our media, our government, our politicians, the supranational organizations, the EU, the WHO, the WEF, you name it. These are the enemies, not our partners, not our neighbors, not our family. This is my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree. Again, another quick question for you there, Dr. Malik. Do you know of any peer-reviewed clinical data that proves categorically that masks work?
Off the top of my head, I'm sorry, I don't have that available, but I've been sent lots of papers and I've seen them, and yes, they don't work.
Yeah.
Basically, if you look, I get asked this all the time, but you're a surgeon, don't you wear a mask? The reason why I wear a mask, surgical mask, is to stop bodily fluids going on my face and in my mouth. The holes in a mask, are like this big and the virus is the size of a pea, if not smaller. It's not going to stop a virus molecule passing through. A standard surgical mask, even an N95, won't stop it completely. So, and if you look at all of the things that were coming out of WHO and Fauci, Dr. Hillary even has done a video, oh, masks don't work. And then it did a complete U-turn on it. Yeah. So that's all I would say. If you do the research, you'll find that there aren't any studies to prove that it works.
I can just see, Ahmed, to say, I can see different comments coming in here. I think people are very appreciative of what you're saying, 100% on point. I see that. I see the comments, guys. Thanks for all the positive comments. I told you there would be more. It's a positive. The one, I mean, but I just wanted, just before I move on from this, the thing I personally struggle with a wee bit is that when I still see people fearfully putting their masks on when they go indoors, they're still sanitizing their hands, still doing that. And my mind's conflicted because, to be honest, Ahmed, part of me feels real sorry for them because they've been completely seduced and bought into the narrative, completely psychologically owned on the one hand. And then on the other hand, part of me does get a bit annoyed because I think, but if it wasn't for your complete lack of reasoning, they would not have been able to take us down as far along the road as they have. I mean, what's your thoughts on that? What do you think when you see them?
I'm not a saint. I get angry. I get frustrated. But I'm working hard at parking the ego, showing empathy and compassion and understanding.
Yeah.
I get angry with those who really victimize and punish. I do get angry with idiots. Mm-hmm. I don't suffer fools well. I have to be honest with you. My personality type is an ENTJ. I have a very high bar for myself, and part of my own learning process has been to become tolerant of others because most people won't reach my bar. I have to accept that I made my own mistakes and I fell for the fear porn. So, and I'm quite critical thinking, and I've always been a bit skeptical on the threshold of what people would call conspiracy theorists. So if I could be hoodwinked and, make mistakes and trip up, but you're right, because then what I've also found is the people who are the most obsessed about wearing the mask and getting the jab are the ones that are overweight, unhealthy, eating junk food in the supermarket aisle. They've got their mask and everything in their trolley is ultra high processed food, garbage.
I know.
And I'm thinking, well, this doesn't make sense. And, and this is the problem. Our society is decadent. Our society is really displaced. We've lost our way. We need to go back to 100 years ago when people were fit and healthy and eating bacon, sausages, and eggs and fat and healthy stuff, and not vegetable seed oils and sugar and carbohydrate and vegan fake meat rubbish. The reality is, look, all this rubbish food makes you unhealthy and stupid. I'm sorry, it really is that simple. If you're fit, healthy, and you take care of your body, you are aware of what it means to be a healthy, sovereign human being, you wouldn't put up with any of this nonsense,
Yeah. Well, this is one of the themes on your Twitter stream, which I find really positive. And it is encouraging people themselves through their diet, by exercise, by just doing stuff that is not that remarkable, but it means that you're empowering yourself to be in charge of your health. You're not saying, oh, Pfizer, I don't need to worry about my immune system because Pfizer's got it sorted. But you're saying, as I think a lot of us feel, that's exactly the wrong way around. You should be sovereign of your body. And you can do that in many simple ways, as you keep outlining, which I completely agree with. But I think you've got, actually, I wonder, can we bring it up, Jed? Can we bring up the you see the top one at the top left there?
That's from my Instagram account, and it's on the Twitter feed.
I'm not sure we can totally if we can make it any bigger or not. But I mean, I thought the only thing I thought I couldn't do that you recommend. I think you suggest a 5-minute cold shower. There's just no way that's happening. I mean, that's never
Oh,
happened. But everything else I can more or less go with, and some of the, just chat through just for everyone's benefit. Some of these kind of I just think really sensible, down to earth ideas.
Yeah. So I have to admit, I'm on a mission. I'm on a mission to get people fit and healthy. Now, there's a bit of a problem with this mission. So on my pinned Instagram and Twitter feed, I've posted this little handwritten sheet. My wife thought it was quite amusing when she saw me do it. But basically, this is my simple guide to health. Now, I've taken 47 years to get to this point. And, I was at one point type 2 diabetic. I weighed 85 kilograms. I had a fatty liver. My bloods were all off.
Yeah.
I had hypertension. And I really looked quite unwell and felt unwell and felt very old. Now, in 2017, 18, my dad was dying of terminal cancer. I came home late at night. It was about 10 o'clock at night. I was working long hours. And I came into the living room with a plate of food, and my dad was sitting on the couch, and he looked at me and he said, "Son, what are you doing? What are you doing?" And I said, "What do you mean? I'm just about to eat." He goes, "It's 10 o'clock at night. You're fat. You look like shit. You're eating rubbish. Your wife and beautiful child are asleep. You look a complete mess. Why are you doing this to yourself? You work 6 days a week, up in the morning at 6 in the morning, going to bed at 12 at 1 in the night. Take this from a dying man. This is not the way to live. I've only got a few months left. I'm telling you, don't keep going on like this." And that night I couldn't go to sleep. It was like a slap in the face. And I just thought about his words. They kept going round and round my head. So the next day I went into the NHS and I resigned. And then I went from working 6 days a week to 3 days a week. I don't do evenings. I don't do weekends. I've cut my income. I don't care. Instead of 85 kilograms, I weigh 70 kilograms. I don't have type 2 diabetes anymore. I don't have hypertension. My blood tests are fantastic. I put on muscle mass. I'm doing jiu-jitsu with people twice my size and weight and half my age. And I'm holding my own. So whatever it is I'm doing is working.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, what I put on that sheet, I don't know why we weren't taught that in med school, but I kind of do, because the reality is it doesn't make money.
Yeah,
now,
that's a good point. Yeah.
That advice that I've given, the problem with it is it's free. Now, human nature has a bit of a problem. If someone gives you the keys to a Bentley and goes, "Here you go, it's for free," the first thing you think is, "What's wrong with this Bentley?
Yeah.
What's the catch?"
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What I would say to your listeners is there's no catch, and it is really the Bentley. The problem is too many people don't take responsibility for their life. Now, everything is multifactorial and linked. If you want to lose weight, it's not just a case of eating less. It's not. Everything matters, whether it's sleep, stress, the food that you eat, how much you eat, when you eat, the type of exercise you do. It's all interrelated. And, I don't want to go into the details of it, but it's all about circadian rhythms, the hormones, gut inflammation, insulin resistance, peak cortisol, melatonin, testosterone, But listen, if you follow this guide, you can stay pretty healthy. And I would argue the best form of health is one where you don't need to take medication.
Agreed. 100% agree. Yeah.
The problem with this is it takes significant lifestyle changes. Now, I had a patient this morning who I've been seeing for a year, and I said to her, "What's happening? You haven't lost much weight." And it was like, "Oh, I know, Mr. Matt, I know you told me. I know, I will get onto it. I will get onto it." And then I've got another patient who's messaged me saying, "I can't believe you had that chat with me 3 months ago. I've dropped 2 dress sizes. I've lost weight and I feel great." And what I mean by that is, there's 2 types of people that when I'm patients.
Yeah.
One, when I give them this gift, they embrace it and they run with it and it changes their life. And the second type of patient goes, huh, yeah, okay, maybe tomorrow.
Mm.
And
Mm.
there's too much of that. We need to stop thinking that health comes in a tablet or a vial.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
comes from fundamental lifestyle changes.
No, you're absolutely right. And one of the things I thought would have come out of COVID as such was that people would have the masses, so to speak, would have actually understood that they've really got to look after their immune system, their biome, all of that stuff. I thought that's what they would have done. But such has been this massive propaganda, Ahmed, that they've been exposed to, that there's clearly a section of them have decided, no, we just need to make sure we get the booster every 6 months and we're going to be super duper fine. And it's so sad that because they are then basically, they're junkies. They're junkies to big pharma. And there's one of the guys watching this, David McCollum, who's a friend of mine. David and I regularly meet up. And David is very knowledgeable in all these matters as well. He said stuff like, you're an inspiration, you're speaking his language. And this is the truth, though. And this is, I think, everybody who's watching or listening, it needs to understand what Ahmed's saying. You know, it's not like that complicated, but you've got to be responsible yourself.
Yeah. Like David,
others.
I don't want to sound like I'm giving these other guys off the hook. Okay, let me make it very clear. Okay.
Yeah.
I want a Nuremberg type 2 trial.
Yep.
I have a lot of questions. I want to know, why did this happen? Who knew about it? Who was complicit? Who made money from it? And then I want them punished. And I want every institution basically razed to the ground and rebuilt. Simple as that.
Yeah.
I want all of these supranational organizations demolished. I want sovereignty back to the individual nation state. And I don't want anyone, no matter how rich they might be, to have the ability to influence our politicians and our policies, at the detriment of the citizens. That has to change. Okay,
Yeah.
so having said all that, however, people have to wake the F up and take freaking responsibility for themselves. Because there's no point complaining about big bad government and the big bad sea if you're too lazy to do what's right for your body, for your family, and for your children. I traveled to Cornwall to see my in-laws. We stop at the service station. I'm disgusted that parents are feeding their children fast food, junk food.
Yeah.
It's criminal. And, I hear this quite a lot from even educated people, doctors. Oh, yeah, I just took them there for a quick snack, a treat. My view of that is an occasional poison a nice treat? It's crazy. We need to take responsibility for our health,
Yeah, but one of the things that annoyed me most at the very beginning of all of this, just right up to COVID hitting, my wife and I went swimming every morning in the pool for about 50 minutes, and just up and down. Great way to start the day. And then what did the government do? Well, they closed all the swimming pools, they closed the gyms, they even closed the parks. But they allowed McDonald's, the fast food guys, they allowed them to stay open. That's so contradictory, isn't it? I mean, you've got to ask big questions about that, Ahmed.
100%, because this is what I mean. So, not that I'm advocating mandating anything, you know my view on that. But if you were going to mandate anything, it would have been exercise every day.
Yep.
Stop eating sugar food. Junk food is, cancelled. No more McDonald's and Burger Kings or whatever, KFCs. You're mandated to take vitamin D3. If the government really cared about us, they would have been saying these things. Now, I'm not saying for a moment that's actually the right thing to do. The government should be telling us anything like this.
Exactly.
They should not be forcing us to do anything. I want the smallest possible government you can imagine.
Yeah.
The government's done a very good job of becoming this parasite that's engorged and feeds on its citizens. And it just wants to get bigger and bigger and have more and more control. And to do that, it needs a compliant, dumbed down population. Now we need to
Yeah.
reclaim that. If the government wants us to be fat and stupid, we need to be fit and healthy and smart.
Yeah. Yeah.
We need to do the
Yeah, yeah,
opposite.
absolutely. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you're 100% right. You know, if the government wanted to stop the pandemic, they should have said, right, everybody exercise, get some fresh air, get some sunlight, get some vitamin D,
Yeah.
you know, no junk food. But they didn't. And then the question is, was that by design or was that through
Yeah.
incompetence? I don't know, right? I'm not going there. I don't, and frankly, I don't care because both are equally bad.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. You know, but I'm sure at Nuremberg we might get some answers to some of those questions because, as you say, you know, sensible eating, sensible lifestyle, exercise, all of those things, they stopped the vast majority of people being able to do. They stopped me for whatever it was, 4 or 5 months because literally I couldn't go into the swimming pool anymore. It's really, really annoying, you know. And you look back on it all, and as you say, whether it was happenstance or whether it was deliberate, doesn't matter. That's what happened. But life's moved on, and we all move on, you know. So I mean, I see some of the
we need to move on and learn. You know, this will be a tragedy if we go back to the way things were in 2019. I hear a lot of people saying, you know, we don't want a new normal. We want things to go back the way they were in 2019.
No.
I disagree with that.
Yeah,
because if we go back to the way things were in 2019, this could all happen again.
Yeah.
Because things were fundamentally ruined then, we could get the pandemic and its ruined policies happen. You know, we need to change things for the better once and for all. You know, and quite often people say, you know, oh, why are you doing this? You're sticking up your head above the parapet. You could lose your private practice. I've been threatened, you know, disciplinary action, losing my livelihood.
Yeah.
Well, it's really simple, David. You know, when my dad came over, you know, in the 1960s, he came over from Pakistan. He was invited by the government to be a migrant and work here and an immigrant. He was allowed to come here. He was 16 years old. He worked in the shipyards in Glasgow and he grafted every day of his life. And he didn't take any handouts. And I remember as a 5, 6-year-old kid sitting at the back of our shoe shop and him telling me that this is the greatest country in the world. It's welcoming. The people are so kind and caring. It's tolerant. It's a democracy. There's freedom of speech, freedom of religion, whatever. He goes, hardly anywhere else in the world is like this country. You are so lucky to be a Scot and British. You know, and I remember those words growing up, okay? And then I thought, could I now have that same conversation with my children? Can I turn around to my children and say, we live in a free, you know, democracy where the politicians are amazing, where the press is free and transparent? And I'm thinking, how in one generation has this happened? And, you know, the one saving grace that my dad passed away in 2018 was he never saw this. I mean, he would be turning in his grave right now if he saw what happened. You know, this was the complete opposite to what he was always telling me and the family about how amazing this country was. So I think it's really important for all the citizens around the world to reclaim, you know, their countries, you know, away from these politicians who fundamentally do not serve us. That's a key problem. You know, we elect them to represent us, but they do not represent us.
I mean, a couple of other points I just want to read out. Over on Getter, Biotech Babe says, turn the TV off and exercise your mind too. Amen to that one. Absolutely. I think I've often said that the media is the real virus that we need to fight against, because again, healthy mind is you know, it's fundamentally important. And I think, you know, this, you know, the nightmare scenario, sitting with a Kentucky Fried Chicken bucket, watching mainstream TV garbage and news in particular, that's what the establishment wants. We have to break free. So I agree, Ahmed. There's no going back to 2019. There's no chance of that, because I think those of us who have woken up, we're not going back at all. We see it exactly, I'm afraid, as it is. So thank you very much.
You're right about the TV as well, because it's the entry point for the mind virus. And I'm constantly telling people, you know, stop watching the news. Just don't watch the news. Because look, the news is a vehicle of the government to basically promote fear and anxiety.
Yeah.
and make you compliant. You know, even if you just, I went to my in-laws, they were watching the news, the BBC News, if you just, watch the beginning, the first 5 seconds, it's dun dun dun.
Yeah.
It instills the
Yeah.
fear of God into you. It just sets your blood pressure up already. And
Yeah.
if you watch the news, you think the world is a terrible place. I don't watch the news. I don't even read the newspaper. I used to read the newspaper. Fuck that. I don't watch the news. I'm not interested. And you know what? When I stopped watching the news and reading the newspapers, whatever, a year ago, and started concentrating on my family and my friends and my wonderful patients, suddenly the world seems such a better place. It was sunny, even on a cloudy day. I was always happy. I was, more positive, more optimistic. So as far as I'm concerned, the news is a mind killer. It's a mind virus. It promotes fear and anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And it can only do that if you watch it. So guess what? Don't let it in your head. Turn it off. Don't go there. Get outside, connect with nature, get out in the woods, in the fields, by the sea, enjoy your dogs or your cats, and your family, and just a big F you to the media as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I agree. Ahmed, unfortunately, we've gotten to the end of our hour all too quickly, and there's some things we didn't quite maybe get the chance to go into, but hopefully maybe if you've enjoyed this, you'll come back again. I can see stream after stream of fantastic comment. So thank you guys for all the positivity. Don't forget, you can follow Ahmed on his Instagram, but also on his Twitter. There you go. You can check him out there, and hopefully keep yourself. The most important thing: keep yourself healthy and be sovereign over your own body. Don't rely on others. Listen, it's been a real pleasure, Ahmed, speaking with you this evening. Thanks so much for taking the time to share your thoughts with all our viewers and listeners, wherever they are. And as I say, I see some really, really great comments. So thanks to everybody. Thanks to you, Ahmed. And catch you all, folks, on Wednesday evening, 8 p.m. See you then. Good night.